Shall we begin?
Sure.
All right. Amy, is everybody getting on okay from what you can see? Any need for help?
From what I can see, yeah, we've got some attendees on, and I just wanted to let everyone know that I have just started the recording of the webinar, so it will be recorded so that it's available for any others who weren't able to participate today.
Fabulous.
Yeah, that's a good resource for people. And as I just said to our speakers, I know a lot of people are wanting to come who are on vacation. So great that we have those capabilities for sure. Thank you so much, Amy, for getting everybody on board. Amy Strachan will be in the background for us as we go through the session today, everybody. So if you're having technical difficulties, you can reach out via the chat at the bottom. You can also raise your hand or use the chat or the question and answer to ask questions. Janet and I will be monitoring those along the way. So my name's Christy Pettit. I'm the CEO of Pollinate Networks. We like to bring the information and inspiration to people trying to do excellent things in the world. And I am so excited to have 4 of those people in front of you here today. Janet Bax, my co-moderator, and Janet, our Women for Nature co-chair and Mentoring Projects leader. Thank you, Janet, once again for all your amazing support and being one of the Uber mentors in the group for sure. We have Women for Nature mentees on the call today. So some folks who have been in past programs, some folks who are in current programs. I'm going to let Janet introduce those folks as we get going. We really wanted to take the time today. So for those of you who've been following along, we've had a couple of different topics, some conversations with the community of practice around leadership. What does it look like to be a leadership in these fields? What does it look like to be a leader who's a woman? What are the characteristics that some of our panelists felt were really important? That led to some interesting discussion. And then last time, I've been really trying to implement some of the things we learned last time on networking. Something that obviously super important to get the work done that we all want to see done is to keep our networks up. And now we have the opportunity to learn from these 3 fabulous people what they have been learning along the way and the things that have really stood out for them along the way. We kind of have a twofold mission here. One is obviously we want to learn from the group and get an excellent sense from Kelsey, Olivia, and Rochelle about the things that have made the most difference to them. And then also continue to think about how we continue these connections, the community of practice, and building, everything that can be built under the Women for Nature mentoring and community of practice. What can we bring to bear? So those are some of the things we'll be thinking about as our panelists are talking today. So over to you, Janet, to do the intros.
Well, thank you so much, Christy. And let me just say how much I appreciate the work that you and Amy and everybody at Pollinate Networks has done to help us really make this project sing. And I also want to thank Jody Joy of Nature Canada, because without Jody, we certainly wouldn't have a program. So a real thanks to you and to Jody and to Nature Canada. And also a thanks to our sponsors, the Canadian Forest Service of Natural Resources Canada, the Chalkers Foundation, and of course you and Pollinate Networks. We really, really do appreciate it. I love the fact that we are going to end with you, the mentees, because mentorship is all about learning from one another. It isn't just about having a mentor and thinking that you're going to learn all these wonderful things. I learned so much from my mentee, and it was such a shared learning process. It was absolutely fantastic. And so to me, it's really wonderful that we are going to be hearing from you 3 today. And it's a really, really important thing that we will be hearing from you. So let me just say who you are. So we have Rochelle Martin, who is an environmental law student at the University of Ottawa, and she is Nature Canada's Labatt Scholarship winner. she's studying law, and studying law with intent to have the tools and wherewithal to have a meaningful impact on the whole area of nature conservation, and to give her the ability to act as an advocate for Indigenous environmental and human rights. She formerly worked with Nature Trust of New Brunswick, and so thank you very much, Rochelle. Kelsey, a shorter bio, but nevertheless as important. You're the Community Engagement Coordinator for Reforest London. And Olivier De Roche is a university student who was the 2017 Young Woman for Nature bursary winner and mentee. And she led this great project of building a greenhouse in her high school, and is interning with her local MP this summer. Wouldn't we love to learn a few things about that experience? Anyway, Christy, I think that's really all I wanted to say. I think without further ado, we'll get to the questions.
Absolutely. I did want to add, so Kelsey did have a little shorter bio for sure, but she also let us know when she got on the phone that she's part of the million trees being planted. And I think, Kelsey, didn't you say you've already had 500,000 trees planted, representing one for everybody in your city?
Yeah, last year we surpassed one per Londoner, and this year we're almost halfway there. So that's really
fabulous.
Motivator.
Yeah,
fabulous. Awesome. Well, thank you for adding that. Thank you.
Yeah, lots of important work going on for sure. So, folks in the audience, if you have questions for these folks, and we absolutely encourage it because we do have sort of an open forum here with the number of panelists. The way to ask a question, you have a little Q&A button at the bottom, or you can raise your hand, or you can just use the chat. So you've got options. The one things you can't do is take yourself off mute and just talk. And I think we all understand why that is. Just you forget and you're in the car or whatever, it gets noisy for everybody else. So this is not to discourage commentary. We absolutely want your participation. And your panelists are prepared for questions anywhere along the way or at the end, whatever you like to do. That would be wonderful. So jumping in, panelists, would love you to reflect on your experience as a Women for Nature mentee, so being part of that relationship. Would love to know the things that stood out most for you. So, it can relate to how you were paired with your mentor, how the relationship developed, all the stuff that we have on the slide there, what you gained and so on. But give us a little bit of a sense of what the benefits were, what the things were that you feel you gained out of the experience. I'm going to start with you, Olivia.
Okay, sure. So my mentor and I, our first conversation kind of was just to lay out the groundworks of everything. So we were trying to figure out what would work best for us. We were both really busy. I was at a point in my life trying to figure out school and how that fit into everything, and she was really busy with her business. So we realized that it wasn't really practical for us to communicate every single day or anything like that. But we figured out that the main thing we wanted to focus on was accountability within our mentorship. So that was probably the biggest thing that I gained from the whole experience, was just this new understanding of what that accountability can be. So not only was it I have different goals of things that I want to achieve, and she was incredibly helpful in sort of reminding me of these things and these next steps to take. But also in terms of idea development, if ever I came to her and I was stuck, feeling I didn't really know what the next step kind of was or anything like that. She was great to have as someone who was very motivating in that sense, that it was okay to be stuck, but not to get stuck being stuck. So that was probably the biggest thing. It was just this incredible reminder that there really are no limits to things you want to do, but having that partnership with a mentor allowed there to be no limits. So that was definitely really encouraging to me, and probably the greatest thing that I got out of my mentorship experience.
Awesome, Olivia. Tell us just a tiny bit more about the accountability thing. So you worked with your mentor and focused on, when you say accountability, was that making agreements and then her holding you accountable to stuff you wanted to do?
Yeah. So I went into the mentorship program sort of just after our high school's greenhouse project had kind of kicked off. And so I was feeling sort of stuck in this place of like, what's next? What do we do with this next? So in terms of, I would maybe come to her with an idea and say, what do you think about this? And she would be like, think about it a bit more, like develop it, come back to me. So we had that chance of, I knew the next conversation we had, I would have to have at least more thoughts to give her kind of thing. So it made sure that I was always constantly working on something, even if it was just thinking through the process of something or developing more of an idea. Knowing that she was kind of expecting a bit of an answer from me held me accountable to being sure I was actually working on those things. Because I think we can all maybe understand we all have stuff that's really important to us in life, but sometimes it can maybe slip under the radar or take a backseat to other things. So it made sure that these important things remained a focus even amongst other things going on in life.
Awesome. That is fantastic. And I'm scribbling notes down, but this is one of those things, Olivia, that we know, but we don't necessarily do. So what a gift that you got into that groove with your mentor to get some support there. What about you, Rochelle? What sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, and I can kind of build off what Olivia was saying with sort of forcing you to make time for important things. And one thing I took away was sort of the importance of having time to reflect. And I think having my mentor, Christine, help with that and support with sort of an unbiased reflection was really valuable. And I guess I learned the value of sort of setting goals, but then reflecting on them and following up on them. And and it was really nice to have it was my first time having a formal mentorship experience. So having somebody who really their only interest is supporting you with your goals I feel really lucky to have had that opportunity.
For sure. For sure. Wonderful. And what about you, Kelsey?
Okay. So I agree with what you guys are saying. It was also my first time being in a formal mentorship program. I think I have a lot of notes, but I think if I were to just pick one single thing that I got the most out of this was just increased confidence. So at first, when we had to set goals, I had a hard time setting really specific goals because I was at a point where I was trying to think about long-term where I want my career to go, and then with that, what the next immediate step would be. But because I have a pretty broad background, like I have a degree in biology, but I've mainly worked in community engagement capacity, I wasn't really sure where to go because I feel like I was more of a generalist. So I wasn't sure what skills to hone because I wasn't sure which ones were my favorite. So my mentor Jan, she has a lot of experience in management roles, and she's worked in so many different capacities, and so she had a lot of great advice about just like developing soft skills and how to recognize your next opportunities. So although at first I was just like, what should I do with my life? She really kind of ran with that. And then as the time progressed, my goals changed in that it was just, all right, right now I'm dealing with this issue at work, and do you have any experience with that? And she always did, and provided a lot of good advice and resources along the way too.
That's great. Well, and I think you've all struck upon some of the most valuable things that we're hoping you get from mentoring. That context that you spoke about, Kelsey, so important. And we had another mentee who was going to be on the call with us, Emma Kirk, who had a conflict with her vacation. And she definitely sort of reflected similar things of somebody to hold me accountable, providing insight and so on. I really love the idea of that you said too, Kelsey, about your goals will evolve through these relationships, and that, you know, you start out big and general and then you figure out who your mentor is and where they can help you. And and plug them in there. So great job on figuring out how to do that most successfully for yourself, for sure. Janet, do you want to take off with the next question?
Yes, and I'm going to start with you, Rochelle, and then we'll go to Kelsey and then Olivia. So the second question is, what are some of the key tips and lessons that you've learned working or volunteering on community nature-based projects that you would like to share with colleagues?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I feel like it was a tough one because I've learned so much working on nature-based projects with the Nature Trust and some volunteer work. So I think a couple of the main things is, something that has always inspired me in my work with the Nature Trust, working on community engagement, is that how willing people are to help. And I think sometimes as stereotype of Canadians is that we're polite and we don't want to ask too much of people, but I'm always surprised at how willing people are to be involved, and especially when it's meaningful work, and learning not to be afraid to ask for people's insight, even people who you assume they're too busy or it's not worth their time. People are always willing to help if it's a meaningful project. So as long as you can show the meaning of their involvement, I've learned to that it's better to involve people than it is to be afraid not to ask and to not involve them. So I would say early and continued involvement of communities in community-based projects. And another thing is that I've taken away is that relationships take a lot of time, and it's worth it to put the time and the effort into building the community relationships. I was just talking with a woman that I work with yesterday about there's a saying that it takes 1,000 cups of tea to build a trusted friendship, which is definitely the case. But if you put the time and the effort in, it's always worthwhile. Yeah, I guess those are just a couple things that I can throw out there to start.
Excellent. Well, we can come back. So, Kelsey.
So I looked at that question from the perspective of if I was giving advice to someone kind of entering the conservation field or environmental field. And one lesson I've learned is that say you came from an ecology or an environmental studies degree, you learn a lot about environmental problems and things, but when you get into the environmental field, I was surprised at how many skills you need to have. So yeah, you may be knowledgeable about tree species or something, but what do you know about managing volunteers or applying for grants, or what goes into a good donor thank you letter? I recently saw a job online that asked for a master's in forestry, and yet the first task that was listed was managing social media campaigns. So to me, I just feel like the environmental field requires such a range of skills. So yeah, I think it's just really good to be open to always learning, and yeah, just being on top of what new skills you should be learning and being curious.
Excellent. Thank you. Olivia?
Yeah, so a lot of the notes that I have that I wanted to speak to actually build a lot on what Rochelle said earlier. And I was thinking about the question, and it seems probably really redundant, but to me, I guess the most important thing I've learned is not to forget that they're community-based projects. So remembering that community is a part of that is so vital. I live in a really small town. I went to a really small high school. So when we were working on our project, we often would kind of get stuck in these ruts of what are we going to do next? We're so small, no one's going to help us. Where are we going to find the help that we need to make this project actually happen? But remembering that we had a community around us, and not just within our town, but outside of that too, of all these people who really were encouraged by the work that we were wanting to do, encouraged by the purpose behind all of it, and really wanting to get involved with it. Remembering that those supports were there was probably the most important thing. You don't have to go through those types of projects alone or with your small group. like community is just such a vital aspect to it, and it's what makes those projects possible. So I was thinking it through, and I was like, that probably seems really obvious, but anytime that I've worked on any kind of community-based project, again and again, I'm reminded of like the power of community and the power of that support behind it. So that was definitely the biggest thing for me.
Fantastic. So I think the issue of relationship building and community, relying on the community and using the community, are certainly things that for me came through. And wow, I mean, those are life lessons as well as, you know, lessons that are so important as you pursue your career, is how important it is to build those relationships and to be able to have relationships or community on which to rely. I mean, it's, you know, life is tough enough, and then you add work and the work pressures, and when you've got people that you can either rely on or call on to help you, I think that's great. So I really appreciated that. And Kelsey, I have to apologize. I am still having trouble. It probably is my computer. So I'm going to say, Christy, that if you got anything really important from what Kelsey said, if you can maybe remind the audience about that. I feel really badly because I'm just having trouble.
No worries. I'm hearing Kelsey not too badly, but I do have feedback from some of the other folks that they're struggling too. So Kelsey, I wonder, would you mind trying that little tactic we talked about as a contingency of jumping off and switching to phone audio?
Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah, and Amy, if you want to give Kelsey any guidance on that. Thank you, Kelsey. Kelsey, I think the thing that I took away from what Kelsey said, and feel free to jump in other panelists to build on, is just such a great insight into the fact that when you get into this community stuff, you realize how many different skills are required to keep it all going.
Yeah.
You may have, and I think there's two really important points that have been made here that I seem to learn over and over again in my life. So ladies, pay attention and start applying, and don't do what I do and have to be reminded necessarily. One is that whole, you know, knowledge is not enough. Knowledge is really important, but the ability to bring people together, to hear what they have to say, to actually have the confidence. And I love how Kelsey said too, one of the big things for her was just confidence, the confidence to say, hey, I had this idea, and see what people say. So that's something that I think that Kelsey made the point of that was really important, is to realize that there, you know, she was looking at a job that required a master's in forestry, and the very first line on the job description was social media.
Oh.
So we do have this sort of interesting piece that's going on. And then the other thing that obviously Rochelle and Olivia highlighted was the importance of community, which I think is, again, the two-pronged thing of it is messy at times and it is difficult at times to get the community around, but you cannot do the things yourself that you can do with that community. You just can't. So seeing you folks sort of stepping into that and understanding that is great. Emma Kirk, when she was sort of writing out some ideas, she said, you know, one of the things for her that she really learned also, which I think is a nice third corollary. Hey, Kelsey, welcome back.
Hi.
Is that better?
Saying I'm muted. Can you hear me though?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Just your computer's muted. Thank you so much for accommodating us there. I was just going to say, you know, the next thing that Emma brought up is capacity, meaning your own capacity for one thing. Are you signing up for stuff that you don't have time to do? Are you suspecting others are doing that? And how do we head off that challenge of ensuring that people are sort of realistically, and we are ourselves realistically assessing the capacity we have to take things on? Because as we all know, nothing can grind things to a halt more than sort of waiting for someone to follow through on the thing that they were supposed to do. So I think that's a valuable piece as well. I'm going to get into more of a content question here. We talked a lot about your learnings and the different observations and the growth that you all are having, which is awesome and inspiring. But we also want to talk, because of the nature of the work here at Nature Canada, about conservation. And if we want to flip to the next question, Stacey, that would be great. So how can we continue to involve young people in this mission to reverse species loss, protect wilderness, combat climate change, all those important issues? Want to ask you folks from your own perspectives about this. What we hear and see sometimes is a lot of freaking out, for sure, not just with young people, but people generally, about these issues. But how do we move past the freaking out into helping people feel like they are meaningfully involved?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start with you, Rochelle, if you want to have a first stab at that, and then we'll cycle around to everybody else.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, the meaningful involvement part is the key. And I know a lot of my friends that, I'm lucky, and a lot of my friends are lucky to be able to actually, our jobs involve conservation work, but a lot of people want to have meaningful involvement, but might not necessarily have the privilege of doing that for work. And they don't really know what they can do. I think that's the main thing. So providing opportunities for people who may not be trained in biology, for example, to be involved, and for engaging young people, making it fun and making it sort of community oriented, I think is key. I know at the Nature Trust before we've had sort of volunteer events where we make sure that there's food, depending on the age and the event, maybe there's beer. I know there's another organization in Fredericton who does more advocacy work, and they engage youth in poster making campaigns, letter writing campaigns. So getting youth together to actually do things, take action. I think just providing opportunities for meaningful action is really valuable to people who are feeling lost. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Kelsey, what would you add to that? Oh, we've lost Kelsey again.
No, she's on mute. You've got to unmute her. There she goes. Oh,
okay.
There you go.
Okay. So first off, I think involvement starts with awareness. So I think the conservation community has a really good opportunity to expose young people to the joy of nature and not just the problems with it. So, an opportunity to show them all the wonderful, positive things about nature. So they can provide environmental education and just opportunities to be immersed in nature, because those are really key to helping them care about nature in the first place and want to protect it. And I can say from experience, just from newsletter articles and social media posts that we've made, some of the ones that get the most views are educational ones. So people seem to really like reading things that are informative. So secondly, providing people with meaningful opportunities. So like Rochelle said, you really have to create just opportunities to get involved, because they do care about environmental issues. But when I was younger, I could agree that they just need direction, and for someone to show them how to be part of the solution. So at Reforest London, we attract thousands of young volunteers every year, and we really care about really making sure we provide a really good experience for them. So we have a wide range of opportunities, from opportunities that don't require any experience, and they can just drop by and take part and plant trees. And so you can see the difference a couple hours later of going from an empty field to seeing trees. So it's really easy to take part, and then you immediately feel like you're making a difference. And then we also have like higher level volunteer roles that require training, and then have pretty impressive and titles. So there's kind of something for everybody to make it easy for people to get involved, depending on what they want to get out of it. And thirdly, I think conservation organizations should also take advantage of trending environmental topics that the kids are into at the moment. So I know right now it's all about waste reduction and plastic use reduction. So I think just evolving, staying up with the times, making good use of social media, will be a good way to just connect with young people and connect with the issues that they care most about.
Great, Kelsey. I love the idea of having a range of things that people can sample, given that everyone is now required to get volunteer hours. It's great that those can be offered and at different levels for sure. What about you, Olivia? And tell me this too. I'll ask the other two to think about it while I put you on the spot with this question. How did you get hooked? Because obviously, something captivated you at some point that made you think you wanted to dedicate a fair bit of time to this. So how did you get engaged? What happened that made you get engaged?
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer that part of your question first, and then I'll circle back to the original question. When I was in grade 11 at my high school, our school does every year around Earth Day, they'll have like an Earth Week. And one of the events they always do is they show some type of documentary or film. And Leonardo DiCaprio's film, and the name is escaping me right now, I can't think of it. But we watched this documentary, and it was kind of the first real exposure I had to kind of the different threats that we are facing. And he doesn't sugarcoat anything. And it was kind of in that moment that I was like, oh my goodness, we have to do something about this. Like, why is no one doing anything about this? And I kind of thought, I can't be the only one feeling about this. And we went back to our class after this movie, and you could kind of feel this different energy in the room. And you could tell everyone was feeling that same kind of sense of like hopelessness and like what's going on. And fortunately, our teacher is just this incredible woman. She just has such like a heart and passion for environmental advocacy. And she definitely caught on to that's how we were all feeling. And she looked at us and was like, no, like stop that. We don't get to focus on how like hopeless this may seem. Our job is to focus on what we can do to make it better. And so it was kind of in that moment that we all were like, okay, you're right, what are we going to do? And from there, that's where the idea for the greenhouse at our school came from. And then that's where they've taken that and just run with it. And they're doing all these amazing initiatives now. So that was kind of the start of everything, was definitely just that exposure to how real these issues were, and understanding just how important it was to not focus on how impossible things seem, but to focus on what can you do to make things better.
Love it.
That answers a bit of it.
I think that's really key. I think those two things are very interesting. Actually, like, awareness, which Kelsey talked a lot about in her thoughts. And then also some kind of meaningful, as we're talking about, some meaningful piece that staves off the just stepping through into despair, which is easy to do for sure at this point. Anyway, tell us what you think, what else can be happening other than that experience you had that could continue to engage people.
Yeah, so I think youth voices are already gaining so much more attention than they used to be. I mean, we see it with the climate strikes that are happening, and we see it with like Greta Thunberg, who's just this incredible young woman doing amazing things. And we see schools getting involved and community groups getting involved. So I think the passion is there, and youth are understanding the role that they can play. But I think just really focusing on that partnership aspect of the conservation community. So broadening the idea of community and making it not just, okay, you have a few supports within your school or wherever they may be, but you have like literally an entire like nation behind you, encouraging you to speak up and use your voice and make a difference. And I think that's why groups like Women for Nature are so powerful, because we all come from across Canada, but we all are partnered together in this fight against these issues that are important to us. And we all have issues that are specifically important to us, but at the end of the day, we can come together and encourage one another with that. So I think giving that same encouragement and partnership to youth, and to highlight their voices, highlight their ideas, and just letting them know that they're not alone in the way they're feeling, that there are other people who care. There's a whole community of people who care and want to support them and give them that opportunity to make the difference. I think it's just such a powerful thing, just reminding young voices that they do have a place at the table and their voices do matter and should be heard. Because, I mean, like I said, like we're seeing today, those voices are the ones making such a significant change right now.
Yeah, it's a really unique time that way. A very, very unique time. It's been, they are big events when the youth step forward in this way, for sure. Rochelle and Kelsey, how did you folks get captivated? Just before I turn it back over to Janet for our last question, so we've talked about, getting in there at various levels, making it meaningful, building the awareness without creating the disasterification of it all, so that people can feel like they can get involved. What was it for you, Rochelle and Kelsey? And I'll start with you, Rochelle. What tipped the balance and made you think, wow, I gotta do this all the time?
Yeah, definitely. I was lucky to grow up in a rural area, so I always spent a lot of time outside. And then it was very similar to Olivia. When I was in high school, we had just a world issues class, and we learned about climate change. This was when, we were first really starting to talk about climate change. And I was amazed also at that time, not much was happening about it. I think it's different now. I think, like Olivia said, there's a lot, youth are doing a lot now, but at that time there wasn't really a lot happening. And then again, similar to Olivia, I was provided with the opportunity to start a fossil-free divestment campaign when I got to university in my first year. So that's where I had an older woman who was involved in the conservation network who sort of brought this idea to me of starting this as something I could do. And I did it, and then I've been involved ever since in looking for opportunities. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And
so
Kelsey?
again, just awareness. I think awareness paired with an opportunity to do something about it. So.
Fantastic. Well, and we're so glad you're on that path. What about you, Kelsey? How'd you get along this path with us?
Yeah, so I'm from Sudbury, Ontario. Okay, sorry. I'm from Sudbury, which is a mining town in northern Ontario, and my family, pretty much everybody worked in mining, but Sudbury also is known around the world as being a successful ecological restoration story. And so as I grew up, I would drive into town and gradually watch some hills of slag, of waste rock, go from a hill of rock to having seeds on it, and then going to grass growing, and then eventually little seedlings being planted, and then watching them grow up as I drove into town over the years. And I always thought, I could do that. And when I thought improving the environment, that's what I pictured. So I studied restoration and ecology. But then when I was at school too, I joined the environmental club and took classes about diet in the environment and green buildings, and I realized how broad the issues are. And then similarly in high school, I watched Inconvenient Truth and things like that. So I then kind of reflected on what I thought could be the way that I could make the biggest difference. And for me, I thought of it as through community engagement and by reaching out to as many people as I can to help inspire them to take action. Because I can take action, but if I can inspire others to do so, that would be even more awesome. So that's kind of my story.
For sure. Thank you all. Thank you all. So we've talked about two ends of the spectrum, the importance of the community and then the importance of the individual, because at some point, each one of you was invited by a group or an individual to get involved in something. And I noticed in Emma's responses, she said, really what did it was I did a cool science fair project, and then the Naturalist Club reached out to me and said, hey, you probably want to get involved with us. So that outreach we talked about before, obviously absolutely crucial. So back over to you, Janet, for the next question.
Okay, so this is the last question, and I'm going to go to you first, Kelsey, just to give you a heads up. So this mentorship initiative that Women for Nature started, and which I think is just so amazing, partly because of its intergenerational component, but also because of what all of us are learning, has not been without its issues. I mean, everybody thinks mentorship is such an easy thing. You just put somebody, you just put people together, but it is a difficult piece of chemistry. Let me put it that way. And I think that without Christy's amazing help and the organization she has, we maybe would not have had the success that we've had. But today we want to learn from you about how we could do things maybe differently, maybe the same, that would encourage maximum participation and engagement. One of you said at the beginning that one of the great things about this mentorship was being deliberate about putting time aside. And it's something, that maybe we don't do enough of, but, that encouraging the engagement and to allow young women leaders in conservation and nature to be more empowered. So we're looking for insights or lessons learned that you'd like to share. And we'd also like to know if you think, would more opportunities to interact as a group be beneficial? So, Kelsey, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Janet. So I'd like to start off by saying that it was a really great experience. There's a lot of guidance and a lot of structure to it, which as I went along in it, I realized why that structure is important, because it is really more difficult than I expected to maintain it and make the time for it, as you said. So I really enjoyed the series of videos. I thought they had a lot of good advice for what to talk about and how to have that accountability. That being said, it also was a little intimidating because they suggested having very regular meetings, and then I saw a video at one point that mentioned having a weekly meetings. So when I wasn't meeting as often as I thought maybe I should, I started to think, oh, maybe I'm not on track. But I do think we still got out of it what we needed, because we had a series of meetings and then emailed in between. So although our schedule wasn't always the same time every week or anything, as long as we kept in touch on a continued regular sort of basis, it was all right. So I'm not sure how to improve that there, but those were just some kind of perspectives. And then I agree that I think it's a good idea to have a bit more of an opportunity for interaction with fellow mentees and also to learn who the other mentors are. So I don't know if that would be having maybe an event somewhere. I know we're spread out all over Canada, or just some more kind of curated online discussions, but I'm really curious to know more about who the mentees are and the other mentors.
Great. Thank you very much. Olivia.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with basically everything that Kelsey just said. I certainly think like group interaction and more of it would definitely be beneficial to the program. I think having young minds come together with like their mentors in that kind of atmosphere. I mean, we all talked about how much we learned from our mentorship one-on-one. So putting all of those groups together and being able to interact and communicate, just like imagining how much more could be done, how much more could be learned, I think is really exciting and really interesting. So seeing how that could kind of play into things, I think would be really, really beneficial and really powerful. And I guess just in regards to sort of the biggest lesson learned was largely not to be too hard on yourself if things don't go the way you imagine them going. So I kind of mentioned it before, but my mentor and I were both in really sort of busy times of our life at the time of our mentorship. So I think we maybe both went into it expecting, that regular communication of every week we'd stay in touch, and I would constantly be coming to her with ideas, and she would constantly have this advice, and we could go back and forth. But in reality, that's not what happened with our mentorship at all. And I was kind of discouraged by it at first. I sort of felt like I was maybe failing this mentorship program. I wanted everything to go perfectly. I didn't want to let my mentor down. I didn't want her to feel like it was a waste of her time or anything like that. But I think we reached a point where we were just really honest with each other, and we were like, you know what, this isn't working. Let's reevaluate and figure out what will work for us. So I think just learning that really with anything in life, but especially with this kind of relationship, understanding where you're at, understanding where that person's at, and then not letting it discourage you, but using that to your advantage so that you can still get the most out of the experience, but you're not sort of wearing yourself out in the process. So I think that was definitely the greatest lesson that I learned, was just to be okay with what happened and to still benefit from it, even if it didn't look exactly the way that I maybe hoped or planned that it would in the beginning.
Wow. So before I go to Rochelle, let me say that is such, I'm thinking back to my very first job where, I had all these questions, but I was afraid to approach the boss and ask the boss about the kinds of expectations and things that I should have done. And then I think back to all the lessons that I learned through the jobs that I had, and how fantastic that in that relatively short period of your mentorship that you were able to come to that realization. Because for some people, it takes them ages to come to that, you know what, this is not working for me. And like, why am I afraid? Why am I intimidated, to use Kelsey's term? I think Kelsey said she was a little bit intimidated, but to get over that and to really make it something that's going to work for you. But anyway, we're going to come back, I hope, to that theme. Rochelle.
Yeah, I want to echo Olivia and Kelsey's sentiment that it was a really great experience, and it was obviously a very thoughtful process, every aspect of it, so I'm really grateful to be part of it. I think definitely I noticed for myself, like summer got extremely busy, so I was the same, like I wasn't able to keep up with communication as regularly as I had planned, which ended up, it's like Olivia said, it's okay to not, I guess, reach the expectations you had in the beginning. But definitely I think the relationship with myself and my mentor is going to continue after this formal process, which is really great. And yeah, so I think just being not too hard on yourself, and realizing that plans do change, and sometimes things like summertime is busy, so.
And Rochelle, do you also think that having more opportunity to get together would be beneficial?
Definitely, yeah. I would love to learn about what the other mentees and mentors are doing. I think it's always so inspiring to learn what others have done, and be able to connect with others with similar interests and similar paths. So I think that would definitely be beneficial.
Yeah, you know what? If I could be a fairy godmother financially, how wonderful would it be to be able to bring everybody together? Because that whole area of peer mentorship, of lessons that you've learned that you can discuss with other mentees, or problems that you've had, and to be able to discuss those with others, I think that's a fantastic bonus. Because yes, there's a richness in a one-on-one, but how much more rich would it be if you were able to, have the benefit of being with others and really sharing all those lessons, and being able to, because you're not as intimidated with your peers, and like, how did you deal with this issue? Like, this happened to me. Has this ever happened to you? That kind of thing, which is really, really useful. Anyway, I know we're getting towards the end. So, Christy, I know you. I'm not sure if we've got any questions.
We actually have a comment, which is a great comment. Tanya Clark. Thank you, Tanya. One of the things that she's adding is an action item to share that she was encouraged to share is aha moments that she's had regarding, management styles and best practices, and maybe sharing that with fellow mentees. So in terms of story sharing, obviously live would be the most amazing thing. In the meantime, though, we do have our Pollinate online community. And everybody on here, if you don't have a sign-in capability, we can absolutely give you one. But that might be a way, while we figure out how to finance our ultimate goal of getting everybody into the same geolocation. Perhaps we could encourage people to start to share some of the stories in the discussion forum there. And so we'll make sure, along with this awesome input we got today in the webinar, that people have a clear path how to get into that discussion forum. And Olivia, Rochelle, and Kelsey also were kind enough to say they would be happy to contribute something there. But Tanya, other participants, why don't we agree? And again, your life will dictate, and your ability to get some time to focus on this will dictate. But if people want to share some of the aha moments they've had, we absolutely know in terms of learning science, it's one of the best ways to get it to stick, is to invite others in on your insights. So we'll commit to getting that up in the next 24 hours and making sure that everybody has access to it. Want to thank everybody for the discussion. Olivia, Rochelle, Kelsey, thank you so much for the benefits of your insights. I can certainly relate to how sometimes you feel like what you're saying seems obvious, but it's often not. You'll find that if you have the similar experience to me, you'll find over time that lots of things you think are obvious are not necessarily obvious to others, and also can frequently benefit from a repeat. So definitely think there's a lot of valuable insight for sure. So we will look forward to seeing everybody on the online community and seeing some story sharing. That would be fantastic. And we'll make sure again that people get access to this excellent webinar. I know some people were away from vacation and wanting to jump in on it.
And can I just say, Christy, that I would like to echo your thanks to everybody who's participated, to the mentees, well, first of all, to the 3 participants today in our 3rd webinar, to you, Christy, for co-chairing and providing so much insight and assistance. And to everyone online and who's not online, because without you, we really wouldn't have the program. And I want to ask you all to, even though it's summer is winding down and you probably are desperate for some time away, I want you to watch out for the final evaluation email that's going to be arriving in your inbox in a couple of weeks. And please, please, please fill it out, report back, because that's a great tool for us. I think we agree that we don't want this to be a huge program. Like there's probably a maximum number, and maybe there's even a minimum number, but we don't want huge numbers, but we want to have your feedback so that we can make this the best possible program. So again, my sincere thanks to everybody.
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll see you online. And I'm sure there'll be other things that Jody Joy and the team at Nature Canada and Women for Nature will continue to scheme up to keep us together in doing this great work. So thanks again, everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.